This little chick loves mealworms. And after watching my chickens enjoy them so much, I started thinking, what if I could produce the mealworms I need myself? Instead of buying them every time, I decided to start my own small mealworm farm. And I wanted to start with something simple. No expensive equipment. No special containers. Just a recycled food container, some wheat bran, and a small colony of live mealworms. So yesterday, the experiment officially began. Chapter 1, Finding the Container. The first thing I needed was a container. I stopped by a local dairy shop and found this large plastic container that had previously been used for halva. The container was going to be recycled, so the shop owner kindly gave it to me for free. For a small experiment like this, I didn't need anything fancy. I just needed a container with enough space, smooth sides, a secure lid, and good ventilation. And this one seemed perfect. Chapter 2, Cleaning the Container. There was still some halva left inside the container. Before using it for mealworms, I needed to remove everything and clean it thoroughly. I washed it carefully, rinsed it well, and let it dry completely. Mealworms don't need a complicated environment. But cleanliness and proper ventilation are very important. Chapter 3, Making the Ventilation. I originally planned to make small holes in the center of the lid. But the plastic was too fragile. Every time I tried to make a hole, the lid started to crack. So I changed the plan. Instead, I cut a rectangular opening in the center of the lid. Later, I will cover this opening with fine mesh to keep insects out while allowing fresh air to circulate. Mealworms don't require huge amounts of oxygen, but they do need continuous air exchange. Good ventilation helps prevent excessive humidity, condensation, bad odors, and mold. The goal is simple: fresh air in, stale air out, while keeping unwanted insects outside. Chapter 4, Preparing the bedding. Next came the bedding. I bought plain wheat bran from a local bakery. Wheat bran is one of the most commonly used substrates for mealworm colonies because it can serve both as bedding and as a food source. I spread several centimeters of dry wheat bran across the bottom of the container. I don't want the bedding to be wet. Mealworms need moisture, but the bran itself should remain relatively dry. So instead of adding water directly to the bedding, I will provide moisture through small pieces of vegetables or fruit. Chapter 5, The 200 grams. And now came the most exciting part. I went to a local shop and bought 200 grams of live mealworms. My goal wasn't simply to feed them to the chickens. I wanted to build a breeding colony. So I asked the seller to leave some adult beetles with the mealworms. These beetles are extremely important. Because if everything goes well, these adults will eventually become the parents of my future colony. Chapter 7, Their First Day. And here they are. My first 200 grams of mealworms. Some immediately disappeared beneath the bran. And that's actually exactly what I expected. Mealworms naturally spend much of their time moving through the substrate. The good news? They're all alive. And some of the adult beetles are still with them. So now the real experiment begins. Chapter 8, Why Mealworms? But why am I doing all this? Mealworms are a highly nutritious food source for chickens and many other animals. They are particularly valuable because they contain a significant amount of protein and fat, along with various vitamins and minerals. Protein is especially important for growing chicks because it provides amino acids needed for muscle development, feather growth, and normal body development. And for chickens, mealworms can be a great high-protein treat. But there is an important point. Mealworms should be considered a supplement or treat, not a replacement for a properly balanced chicken feed. The goal of my farm isn't to replace their normal diet. It's to produce a natural, protein-rich supplement right here at home. Chapter 9, The Amazing Life Cycle. And here's the fascinating part. A mealworm isn't actually a worm. It is the larval stage of a darkling beetle, commonly known as Tenebrio molitor. Its life cycle has 4 main stages: egg, larva, pupa, and adult beetle. The mealworm that we usually see is actually the larval stage. This is the stage that grows, eats, molts, and eventually transforms into a pupa. Then something amazing happens. The pupa transforms into an adult beetle. The adult beetles mate and lay eggs. And those eggs eventually hatch into tiny larvae. The cycle starts all over again. Chapter 10, How long does it take? Under warm and suitable conditions, the entire process can take several months. The exact timing depends heavily on temperature, humidity, food, and the health of the colony. The eggs hatch into tiny larvae. The larvae grow through several molts. Then they become pupae. The pupal stage is relatively short. And finally, adult beetles emerge. These adults become the breeding population. So the mealworms I bought today are not just food. Some of them could become the beginning of an entire new generation. Chapter 11, My Plan for this colony. For now, I'm keeping everything together in this one container. Larvae, pupae, and adult beetles. I want to observe how the colony develops before making the system more complicated. But once the number of adult beetles increases, I plan to add another container. That container will be dedicated to the breeding beetles. The adults can stay there, mate, and lay eggs. The larvae can then be raised separately. This will make it much easier to control the colony and continuously produce new mealworms. Eventually, I may use separate containers for different stages of the life cycle. Chapter 12, Keeping them healthy. The basic principle is surprisingly simple. Dry bedding, good ventilation, moderate temperature, and a small source of moisture. I can provide moisture with vegetables and fruits such as carrots, potatoes, or watermelon rind. But moisture needs to be controlled. Too much moisture can cause mold and unpleasant conditions. So I will never pour water directly into the bedding. Instead, I'll use small pieces of fresh produce and remove them before they start to spoil. Chapter 13, The Bran should remain mostly dry. From now on, I'll be watching several things. How quickly the mealworms grow. How many pupae appear. How many adult beetles survive. When the beetles begin laying eggs. And most importantly, whether this small colony can eventually produce enough mealworms to feed my own chickens. I started with just 200 grams. But if everything goes well, those 200 grams could become the foundation of a self-sustaining colony. Outro, the experiment has begun. Yesterday, I didn't have a mealworm farm. Today, I have my first colony. A recycled container. Some wheat bran. A few pieces of watermelon. And 200 grams of live mealworms. That's it. But inside this simple box, an entire life cycle is about to begin. Eggs will become larvae. Larvae will become pupae. Pupae will become beetles. And those beetles may produce the next generation. My goal is simple, to produce my own mealworms for my chickens, using a small, inexpensive, home-based system. And this is only the beginning. Now let's see what happens next. Will these 200 grams eventually become my own self-sustaining mealworm farm? Let's find out.